Tonight, a proposed development called Lino Lakes was discussed at the Lino Lakes City Council meeting. It would be located on 156 acres of what is currently Robinson's Landscaping at 310 Main Street and include housing options and a mosque. Representatives from the Minnesota chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations support this project.
Let's embrace progress and prosperity for our community.
Those opposed to the project say it could negatively impact traffic and water supply there, as well as overwhelm schools.
Questions today after the Lino Lakes City Council tabled the Medina Lakes development project. Gordon Severson joins us now with reaction and what comes next for this controversial project. Gordon?
Yeah, developers argue the council's decision to table this project is racially motivated, arguing no other projects in recent years have experienced this much pushback from the city and its residents. And despite this roadblock, developers say they are not giving up. The Medina Lakes project includes hundreds of homes, restaurants, and a mosque. And developers from Zicker Holdings want to build on a 156-acre piece of land in Lino Lakes. But Monday night, the council decided to table the project.
We urge the city council to right the wrongs thus far and not to go down this path of continued injustice.
The city is also considering a moratorium that would put all building in this area on hold for up to a year. In previous city council meetings, members have voiced concerns about city infrastructure, such as water supply.
This moratorium isn't meant to stifle development, but to ensure clarity, transparency, and thoughtful planning.
Many residents have also spoken out against the project.
I am against any large development. I don't care who the builder is.
The Council on American Islamic Relations, however, argues the decision to table the project and create a moratorium are based on racism and Islamophobia.
What we're seeing is a clear disrespect for rule of law, disrespect for decorum, and clearly no hiding the bias.
The architecture firm on the project is also concerned about the motives behind the city's decision.
This is the first time in my professional history into what I'll call as a premeditated murder of a project.
Developers and CAIR Minnesota say they're still figuring out their next move. They're waiting to see if the city approves the moratorium next week. If that happens, they may consider legal action or other options to convince the city to reconsider.
This particular action is discriminatory. We believe that the city acted in bad faith and the leadership is acting in bad faith.
I left messages with all 4 city council members and the mayor in Lino Lakes to learn more about this decision to table the project and to get an update on this moratorium they are considering. We have not heard back from any of them at this time. Back to you.
All right, thank you.
Lino Lakes City Council members approved a moratorium last night, blocking new development in the northwest part of the city. This is a 4-to-1 vote, and it affects at least 2 projects right now. But the proposed Medina Lakes project, well, that's the one that's been getting the most attention. This project would include homes and businesses and have a mosque at the center. The moratorium has been under intense criticism from members of the Muslim community who say that this attempt to block the project is Islamophobic. Community members had another chance to weigh in on the plans just last night.
Moratoriums like these can make people feel jumpy. So when you're encountering people who seem a little scared, who seem a little fearful, that's where they're coming from.
You guys should check out outside because there's a lot of people from Lino Lakes and the vast majority of the people want this moratorium to go through.
The development moratorium will now go into effect next month, and then this is going to mean a pause in building here for 1 year. Minnesota chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations is condemning the decision. They just released a statement this morning. It says in part, quote, "The decision by the Lino Lakes City Council represents a setback for fairness and inclusivity. The Medina Lakes project is an opportunity to foster diversity and meet the growing demands of our community. We're deeply disappointed by this vote, which undermines due process and the principles of equitable governance."
Last month, a representative with Minnesota Council on American Islamic Relations told city council members they feel a moratorium would be discriminatory and wrote a letter to state leaders, including Governor Tim Walz and Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, that they're prepared to take legal action if necessary.
Now, while you're eating lunch today, the Minnesota Council on American Islamic Relations will demand answers from the Lino Lakes City Council. The group is questioning the council's decision to table the highly criticized medium-sized Medina Lakes development project. That happened about 10 hours ago. The development project would build homes for roughly 1,200 people, restaurants, and a mosque. Some residents are concerned about the size of the development and the traffic it would bring. The city will vote next Monday on a moratorium for land where the development would be.
City leaders in Lino Lakes have voted to put plans on hold for a Muslim-focused community.
Minnesota Council on American Islamic Relations calls this move to delay the development discriminatory.
Fighting this, it is a continuation of Islamophobia. It is when cities and towns use land use as a way to deny Muslims either moving in through housing, schools, or cemeteries.
The developers say it would be a Muslim-friendly community with housing, a variety of businesses, and a mosque.
For the past 3 months, we have seen hundreds of people showing up to every city council meeting or planning meeting. And in those meetings, people have continuously projected Islamophobic, anti-Muslim statements in why they do not want this project to move forward.
Thanks for joining us. For the first time tonight, we are hearing from Lino Lakes city leaders about why the city council tabled a massive Muslim-focused housing development. The Council of American Islamic Relations claims race is the biggest factor.
But as Gordon Severson explains, the city council member balks at the suggestion of discrimination and talks about why he wants to pause the plans. Gordon?
Yeah, Lino Lakes City Council member Michael Rulin says he first proposed the idea of a moratorium back in March, long before the council had even heard of Zicker Holdings, the developer behind the Medina Lakes project. So he argues this idea that the moratorium is racist and directed specifically toward this project isn't true.
Councilmember Ruland?
Yes.
Michael Ruland was among 4 Lino Lakes City Council members who voted in favor of a moratorium Monday night.
That motion carries 4-1.
That puts all residential building on hold for 1 year in a nearly 1,000-acre stretch of land in the city.
We're just trying to be smart about what that area ultimately looks like, how it's laid out.
Ruland says the moratorium will give the city time to conduct testing and reviews and to see how development would affect traffic and water use in the city, concerned that it may be too much growth too fast.
Right now we can't drill another well if we wanted to. We're using 700-some million gallons of our allotted 900.
But Medina Lakes developers and the Council on American Islamic Relations argue the moratorium was only passed to keep their project out of the city, arguing the moratorium represents a, quote, setback for fairness and inclusivity.
Clearly, no hiding the bias.
They basically were saying that we are Islamophobic if we do a moratorium. We are, stopping the development. Nobody's stopping it. We're just pausing it for now, right? Hang tight for a year. Let us do our studies.
Ruland says the moratorium also affects another developer who has plans to build in this area. He says it's the 3rd moratorium the city has passed in the last 3 years. He argues many residents support the moratorium because they are concerned about all new development in the city, and they want to understand the impact before they agree to grow.
To be accused of racism or Islamophobia is it's shameful, honestly. So far from it, and that's why I finally had to start speaking out about it.
Now, I also spoke with the developers of the Medina Lakes project this afternoon. He is disappointed but not surprised by the council's moratorium. He says they're not going anywhere. They will continue to push for this project even if they have to wait until this moratorium is over. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Gordon.
Thanks for joining us. New details tonight about the owner of a group trying to build a major development, including a mosque in Lino Lakes, a development that was just this week put on hold by the city council. That decision put a moratorium in place on all residential building for 1 year. Medina Lakes developers and the Council on American Islamic Relations argued that decision stemmed from racism because of the mosque, something the city vehemently denies. The discussion among the council and the public has been ongoing since April and has garnered a lot of attention. Now, tonight, another twist to the story. Lou Goose is shedding light on the alarming background of the man behind the development proposal. Lou, what'd you find?
Well, Chris, digging through public records and speaking with a number of sources, I've confirmed the man behind the proposed development in Lino Lakes is using an alias. He's not and has never been a licensed contractor in the state of Minnesota, and he has a history that includes admissions of fraud.
I stand before you with a humble heart.
The man behind the proposed Lino Lakes housing development and mosque calls himself Faraz Yusuf,
but court records show his name is actually Faraz Mohammed, and he has a past that includes a fraud conviction in criminal court and fraud allegations in civil court.
As a builder, I can proudly say that I have fewer lawsuits than most.
And despite telling the public, as well as KAIR 11 News in a past interview, that he is a longtime builder,
I myself have been a residential builder and developer for the last 8-9 years.
KAIR 11 News has confirmed that despite starting the process with the state in 2019, Mohammed is not and never has been a licensed contractor in the state of Minnesota. His legal troubles began in 2011 when, according to a criminal complaint, he forged his boss's name onto checks he wrote to himself, cashed, or used to pay his own bills, to the tune of $20,000. He pleaded guilty to theft by swindle, court records show. Just this week, Mohammed settled a lawsuit accusing him of fraud for allegedly falsely claiming his company was a licensed contractor, then failing to perform more than $50,000 of work he was paid for. Mohammed agreed to pay the plaintiff in installments with no response to the allegations. Back to that new name, the lawsuit also claims Mohammed uses aliases including Faraz Yusuf to confuse, mislead, or otherwise defraud persons with whom he does business. Faraz Yusuf is the name he's been using regarding his latest company, CAIR Holdings, which records show was created in December 2023, less than 4 months before presenting the idea of the Muslim-centric Medina Lakes development project to the Lino Lakes City Council. Council members this week voted to pause the proposal for 1 year to further research that amount of growth, while Mohammed and the Minnesota Council on American Islamic Relations accused them of Islamophobia. Mohammed's company, CAIR Holdings, boasts a proven track record spanning over 10 years, creating thriving communities. Mohammed's father told us he has been doing a lot of contracts. Like working for other companies, though, or what?
No, his own projects. Yeah.
But he's not a contractor.
Oh, he's a general contractor.
No, he doesn't have a license, though.
I think he has.
He doesn't. I checked. Concerned Lino Lakes residents have questions about these flyers received from Mohammed's CAIR Holdings office, asking for a $10,000 down payment to reserve a home in the now paused Medina Lakes project. The fine print says down payments are non-refundable after 30 days. Faraz Mohammed did not return my many calls and messages, but late today a friend contacted me to say that he is currently hospitalized. Also late today, I talked with a man who paid that $10,000 down payment to reserve a home in the development, and he says many others have as well. This man says he's not asking for a refund, though, because he hopes the project will go through. Questions remain, though. How much money has Mohammed collected, and what happens to it now? Chris?
Lou, did the city council have any reaction to this report from you?
Yeah, they had been hearing a lot of these things from taxpayers in their city, so it was definitely on their radar. It just kind of took today putting it all together, and I received a thanks from at least 2 of them. Chris.
All right. Good fact check. We'll follow up again. Thank you, Lou.
The nation's largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization is calling for the resignation of a Lino Lakes City Council member. So the Council on American Islamic Relations, it's also known as CAIR, says that Christopher Lydon enthusiastically responded to a, quote, anti-Muslim email. This email was sent in response to a New York Times article on a development project which included a new mosque. The person who sent the email included commentary like, quote, don't believe the lying Muslims, and called the Quran hate speech against Jews and Christians. Now, Councilmember Lydon is said to have responded to the email saying, quote, might be the best email I have ever received. This is according to CAIR. Now, the Muslim advocacy group is calling for Lydon's resignation. We have contacted Lydon for a response but haven't received an immediate reply.
Today, the Minnesota chapter of the Council of American Islamic Relations will address what they're calling threats to the Muslim community. CAIR Minnesota's Executive Director, Jaylani Hussein, says supporters of Lino Lakes Council member Christopher Lydon accosted him Monday, forcing him out of City Hall. Now, Lydon has come under fire for an email some say was Islamophobic. CAIR Minnesota called for his resignation shortly after. At today's conference, they'll demand an ethical review of the council member's actions and ask the council to take disciplinary action. That'll be at their St. Paul office at noon.